Tesla's sustainability master plan and whether it's doable or not. I do want to make one comment based on what Philip said long ago. If you took half of the area used for ethanol production in the United States, I don't remember the exact acres anymore, square miles, but it's pretty big, that we grow corn to make a biofuel. And when you actually do all the analysis, you find out that you're not really reducing any emissions. But even so, we use a lot of land in the United States to grow corn for ethanol production. If you took half of that land and put solar panels on it, you could power the entire United States. To give you just a
Oh,
feel for the fact that you don't need that much land to create enough energy. I don't know if that figure includes the fact that you have to handle day-night kind of things, but I think in terms of raw energy production, that would be enough to power the entire United States. Thanks.
I
But
would push back
we'll
and
go in a lot more detail tomorrow as well.
I would push back and say that's if you don't take a systems approach look at it, Dan. You're only looking strictly at ethanol production and you're looking at average energy production. A lot of the corn ground acres are in the northern central Midwest of the United States, which doesn't have as good of solar capacity as more equator based or southern United States areas. So you can't one for one try and replace without looking at the whole system. You're also missing the feed byproducts and also the energy production that can stay local instead of where it's a cyclical nature instead of just strictly pulling out of the ground and emitting to the atmosphere that fossil fuels or oil does right now. And I guess I maybe don't have time to get too far into the weeds while I'm being regenerative and putting fertilizer back out on the field for crops to grow. But that is what is important is we look at the full systems that sometimes we forget about. We can't just convert everything down to energy because there is a symbiotic relationship if we are cycling the crops and doing the production methods right. We can increase organic matter in soils by utilizing livestock to use some of these cellulosic processes that humans can't consume readily available and have a complete readily available protein. So we need to make sure we're considering the full systems when we talk about energies and this and that. There's also the microbial, the soil level side that gets forgotten, that just straight energy does not, you know, equating everything to that does not give us a solution because it's not a one for one. It's the synergistic complement between the growing, the plant life, as well as cycling that carbon back from the atmosphere to the soil or to some of these products that you don't get when you just consider solar, much less the how we're going to dispose of these solar panels when we're done using them.
I have a quick question. So
Oh,
I
can
want
I?
to log into the talk tomorrow. So I clicked on the Mother Earth First greenhouse on top of the chat here, and I see that the next one, and I joined your group here because I think this is full of really amazing people. That we have farmers and aviation lawyers, and this is amazing.
You should be able to see it for tomorrow. I do want to respond to Brian. First of all, my comment was not a call to replace all ethanol production with solar panels. It was to show the scale needed to power the United States with renewables. So it was just a way to visualize the amount of land. But I would still argue that certainly when it comes to transportation as opposed to food, I think you're talking about food production. We're not using corn for this corn. We're not using ethanol corn for food production. We're using it for biofuel production. And
We
certainly,
are.
well,
Distillers is a
well,
byproduct
we
from
grow corn for
ethanol.
food, right?
Distillers
What was that?
distillers grains is a byproduct of ethanol production that is used in feedstuffs for livestock to grow protein,
Okay, for
to grow
livestock.
food.
Okay.
So you're
Yeah,
getting
so they
ethanol
make more use out of
and
it.
feed.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
instead of
But I
just
would still argue,
composting.
I would still argue that if we were going to look at it from a systems point of view, using growing corn for biofuel production doesn't make sense compared to putting solar panels on that same space and then powering electric vehicles because um, the amount of sunlight that is turned into corn to grow plants is about 2%. And of course, when you distill it and do all those other things and actually get useful biofuel out of it, I'm sure it's probably less than 1% of the sun's energy hitting that location is being turned into energy. But then when you and also then when you turn the biofuel into motion in the car, you lose 70-80% of the energy right there. But if you solar panels have over 10 times the efficiency of converting sunlight into energy that a corn does. So when you put solar panels there, you immediately get 10 to 25 times more energy out as electricity. And then when you turn that into motion in a car, you only lose 10 to 20%. So you're getting what, probably, just quickly off the top of my head, 50 times more motion per acre with solar panels and EVs versus corn and an ICE car. So I think from a systems point of view, it's still the smart thing to do.
But you're
Thanks.
still discounting, yes, from
Now,
the
grown
solar
corn for
energy
food. Go ahead.
to a
Grow it. Yeah.
solar energy to corn kernels. You're discounting the whole soil microbial health effect that the rest of that sunlight is putting into the soil. So your absorption rates are limited by your energy conversion just to a car when you're not looking at the full system of soil health and plant diversity that you can have on this ground by growing this. So
No, do it on
that's
other ground. Do it on other ground. What do you mean? There's a lot of ground. There's a lot of ground. Not you. By the way, you won't actually. By the way, let's be clear. You won't actually put the solar panels on the land used for growing corn. You're going to continue to grow corn on that same land, but instead use it for human nutrition and other purposes rather than for cars. The place you will put the solar panels are in deserts and land that's not covered by plants for the most part. Doesn't really make sense to do that. And or I mean, it may make sense in certain locations, but you're not going to use agriculture land for it unless you're putting like maybe wind
well,
turbines there, and you can grow land, you can grow crops at the same time. So we're just using this to understand the scale of the problem, not to look at the particular acre you're going to convert for one use or another. You're going to try to be smart about that. And I would also argue that um, using the corn to feed cattle is also probably a negative climate impact, of course, as well, because you're going to create a lot of methane and have a lot of destructive.
you
You're
need to
also
look
not
up Frank
you're
Mitland
also
or
taking
Dan.
forest
We've told
land
you this before,
and
and you
converting
want
it
to
into
ignore the
agriculture.
fact that it's part of a cyclical life cycle, the methane biogenic cycle. Frank Mitlander, the UC Davis Clear Center, it's part of a biogenic carbon cycle. And we are not creating more methane in the environment. While they do produce methane, we are also producing food instead of just producing miles traveled with a car or only tailpipe emissions.
Sure.
So
But you're
you
creating
you had made
20
you had made
times.
I have a
earlier
question.
Okay, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute,
We're
wait a
you had
minute.
getting
made
we're getting
Hold.
off topic
earlier
here, but
Hey, you
yeah.
guys, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But look at we can't hear you when you're both speaking at once, of course. So that's wasting time. We can't do that. And also, um, could you maybe let's take this conversation maybe offline or something like that, or go one at a time. And also, we have other people who may want to comment on the story that Philip was presenting. So
I'm done.
Thank
I'm
you,
done.
Bev. If I may, I just wanna round off by saying that I mean it's great that we have technology and innovation, and obviously we're going to see much more of that. I'm just afraid that a lot of the costs associated to renewable energy is being externalized, and that this rush towards electric vehicles, renewable energy is maybe something that we should think a little bit more in depth about. Think about all the different options clearly rather than just to identify a single option and go full scale for that. It also feels to me as if a lot of this is sort of in investment profit based. So people, I'm of the opinion that we cannot profit ourselves out of the situation that we are in. That's part of the problem is this overconsumption. So that model needs to change, you know. So yeah, but interesting, Dan. I'm really looking forward to your room tomorrow, and yeah, thank you everybody. And yeah, if anybody has any questions or issues or comments,
I have something to sort of mention about that, about the whole story and everything. So, as somebody who lives in San Francisco and has one foot in being a naturalist and the other foot being a technologist, I've always been frustrated by how capitalism has been sort of subverted just to for the lowest common denominator, oil at the sacrifice of nature. It's one versus the other, and I don't think that it needs to necessarily be that way. There's a lot of people who dislike capitalism and everything. As was it Winston Churchill said? I think he says, did he say it's capitalism's or was it democracy is the worst thing except all the others? But in both cases, they're sort of both true. And I do think